All right, good morning. It is 11:06 a.m. and I call this meeting of the Georgetown Independent School District to order. Let the record show that all board members are present. The meeting has been duly called and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551. If you would please join me in the pledges. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one state, indivisible.
I never have gotten this second step.
You guys know
I know.
my heart?
Let's
go. It's harder and harder.
Every time.
Oh, look, Michelle actually gave it to me.
That's pretty sad.
Moving on. Okay, so we will go ahead and, having had no citizens sign up to speak before the board, we will go directly into the presentations. Hand it over to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is an exciting day, and we're so happy to have all of you here. Thank you for rearranging your schedules and making this a priority, and really appreciate it a lot. We want to start today to share with you, and of course the public, what was going to happen through the interview process and the important parts of it. But it really is the opportunity to get your mindset on what is about to take place and the very, very important job that you're about to do. So anyway, I think Rick's going to start us out on we've got a PowerPoint, probably about a half an hour, 25 minutes, if that's okay.
Okay, well, good morning. This is exciting for us. It's always, when we get to this point, to be able to tell you about the candidates that we've brought forward. We're really happy about that. We'll talk, obviously, in closed session about details and share a lot of information with you today that makes us very proud, and I'm hoping that you're going to feel the same way. So the purpose of this part, this is actually board training, but this is all going to be pretty intuitive to you. It's common sense, really. But it never hurts to be better prepared and remind yourself of the things you have to keep in mind as you're doing this interview, because most likely you all have interviewed other people for jobs, but you haven't, as a team, interviewed the CEO of maybe the most important job in this town, and one that you will have to work closely with. So it's a big deal. It's the most important decision you'll make as a board member, and we just don't want to leave any stone unturned. We want you to be totally prepared for the interview process. That's what this time is about right now. So one of the things we want to remind you of, you probably have already thought of this, is organizing the room for the interview. And it's mainly is that everybody needs to be visible and be able to have eye contact. So set the room up in a way, and I know you're going to have help doing this, set the room up in a way that, first of all, you need name plackets. So everybody sees, they're going to need to be able to see your names. They've watched your board meetings, most likely. I think they've all told us they're doing that. And so they're going to recognize you, but they haven't been around you, so they need to know your names when they're looking at you, and they need to be able to look you in the eye as they speak and answer questions. It's always good. You do a good job of having water for us. I'm sure you'll do that for them and for yourselves. We urge you to review the applications. I know you're going to want to do that when you see them, so please review those applications as many times as you feel like you need to. There's a resume with that. That's a real good summary of everything, and it's their opportunity in their words to show you who they are, what they've done. So review those resumes. We're going to go over just a little bit of that in summary as we introduce them to you, but you need to become familiar with that, and I know you're going to want to as soon as you see them. And just to let you know, all of these candidates have really strong references, and we have checked them out. Some of them we've known for a long time over the years, just professionally. Some of them we've just met in this process. So we'll talk a lot more about that, but we have reviewed all that, and we've contacted references that they didn't supply us with, ones that we know that would know about them and know about their work and their personality and their style and all that. Okay.
Can I add?
Sure, yeah, oh yeah.
Just as you start this, it says common sense again, but they're interviewing you as well. You know, you're representing the district, you're representing yourselves. I don't know a whole lot of other jobs where you work for 7 people with different personalities and different opinions. But they're looking at each of you and saying, you know, what's this person about? Who is this? And so how you represent yourself is important to them as well. Is this a board that I can really make a difference with? And also we ask that you remember the confidentiality. Some of these candidates do not want their current communities to know that they're in this process yet. So.
Yeah, that's, I think one of the first things we told you is confidentiality is extremely important. And believe me, every one of these candidates has told that more than once. It's going to be confidential, right? And they just keep asking as we go. And then the next thing they always ask is, tell me about the board. So Nola just touched on that. They're really interested, is this a board I can work for? I want to pick my family up and move them to a new town where I don't know anybody probably, and and my career is going to be based on that, our life as a family. So it's a big decision for them, and we've all been through that, so we know what that's like. Okay, so moving on. Next item is about questions, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be about 16 questions. You'll have approximately an hour and 45 minutes for each interview. And so just a little bit about that. If you have an hour and 45 minutes, it's going to take probably 10 to 15 minutes for introductions from them and from you. You might want to tell them to be brief in the introduction, but I mean, you got to let them go long enough they feel like they've told you who they are, and so give them time to do that. And reserve time then at the end for them to ask you questions. Almost all of them will have questions. I know I did, and I think we all did when we were interviewing with a new school board. We had questions, and that was really important to us. So,
will they ask questions directly to one of us, like would they say, Stephen said this, or will they just throw out a question and then we have to think, who's going to answer that?
most likely they'll throw out a question, but it's possible. I know, well, I'll tell you one of the questions I ask, and depending on the answer, then I ask them a specific question. And the question was, are you going to run for the school board after you hire me? You intend to stay with me if I'm coming to stay with you. And so, I mean, I wanted to know. It's not, I mean, it doesn't have to be that everybody says yes, but then my follow-up was, because 2 of them said no, I said, well, how much longer do you have on the board? Are you going off next month? Or, how much longer are you going to be on the board? And, if you come on this job and the board turns over in 1 or 2 years, that's a little scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, it happened to me. That board that I asked that question to, I had more board members that hired me in Arlington, where I came from, than I did there in 2 years. 2 years' time, it turned over. It all worked out, but it's a little challenging. And if I had known that up front, I might have thought a little longer about what I was going to do. So anyway, but that's a good question. Most likely they'll just throw it out and see who answers. And y'all can decide, and you can have more than one person answer the question.
They also
Sure.
may follow up. Say, for example, if you're responsible for a particular section of the questions, and then as 45 minutes has gone on, you go, you know, I wanted to add to that question that you asked earlier. And that may be something that they may do as well.
Yeah,
My question is about following up pertaining to the topic on this sheet. Let's say, for example, you're talking about instruction and the person brings up, well, I did a curriculum audit, which was very blah, 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 blah. And so is it okay to ask the follow-up question, which would be, how did you select the person to, or the firm to do the curriculum audit? Is it okay if it's within the realm of what their answer was to ask a follow-up question?
if it's pertaining to the question, yes.
If it is, and if you have time. 16 questions is a lot of questions.
That's a lot of questions.
So we don't want the first group, which is academic, of questions to dominate a half an hour of time, because then the last section doesn't get any time. And so you'll talk about that when we look at the questions a little bit later. But also remember, take notes and say, I can ask about that curriculum audit if this happens to be someone that ends up in the second round, because that's the important
That's what I was
part.
gonna say, we can deep dive in a second. So if we take good notes on each, because you do 3 and you're gonna be confused on who said what at the end of the
Right.
interview process.
That's right.
So if you take good notes, we can always do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you let them get to the point where they wanna ask us questions, if we didn't make them deep dive, you can see what they're really interested
Right,
in
what they're
by
asking
the
the
questions
questions.
they answer and see if that aligns with what you want,
Yeah.
by not forcing that conversation early.
That's correct.
Yeah. Yeah, but you don't want to spend all your time on, on one, because you want to be, all of the candidates need the same questions. So if you use them all up at the beginning, you can't get them all in.
That's right. Okay.
So, okay,
Thank
but
you.
that's a good point. You need to be prepared for that. All of the questions are, almost all of the questions are ones that you all have submitted. So they're your questions. The only thing that's added to that is some, Nola and probably Jody did some too, just some tweaking of the question to maybe make it fit better into the interview. But, so it's your questions, and you want to be sure you're remember the profile and the things that you're looking for Georgetown ISD, the profile, and be looking for those things specifically.
Tape this to your shirt.
Yeah.
Little pin on your shirt for the next 2 weeks.
You have to do it upside down. So that-
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Exactly. This is important. So.
Okay. Going on to slide 4. We're going to go over the questions in closed session today, and
We'll video these interviews.
no.
Archives and videos of meetings available.
Well, they're watching you
Oh,
all.
you're talking
Yeah,
about.
Yeah, that's
we're
what we're
talking about our
talking about.
meetings.
Right.
right now, they're
They're probably watching right now. What questions might
I've
they
never
ask?
recorded a video, interview like that. It's a bit intrusive.
We say
Well,
answer
we don't.
candidly.
Yeah, we don't recommend recording the interview.
We say answer candidly because they probably have already been watching.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
probably just want some insight into what they've seen in meetings that maybe they've viewed.
So we'll go over the questions more in closed session. If you have any other questions there. There are hypothetical questions or what-if questions, and the good thing about that is it gives you a chance to assess how quickly can they think and come to a conclusion that makes good sense to you as an answer. What kind of reasoning and ability do they have, and what's their judgment like when you propose a question like that? So those are good. They don't all need to be that way, but they're good questions. Experience questions that what's applicable to Georgetown, your situation. Get to that, because that's the most important thing you're going to see, and then making sure that the way you ask the question is aligned to the profile, because that should kind of drive that whole process. like we said before, trust the process. So far, I think it's worked pretty good. And it's going to get better. I think it's going to get better after you meet these candidates. Okay, now, this is, again, maybe common sense, but some of it's a little different related to schools. It's what can you not ask? Can't ask anything about ancestry or nationality or race, anything about religion, anything about marital status or living arrangements, or children. If they bring these things up, just listen, but don't ask questions about it. Don't enter into a question and answer deal on those topics. A type of a discharge from military branch of service, their age, sex or sexual preferences, whether or not they've been arrested, politics or political preference, health or disability. We can ask those questions. We can find out. If you have a question, just tell us. If it's something related to that, 99 out of 100, we either know or we can find out.
Well,
And you-
certainly financial
Yeah.
arrest, those things will come up.
That'll come up,
Yeah.
yeah. In the background check. Yeah. And pretty much most of the rest of it, we already know. And if we don't, we can find it. We have a way to find it out without you having to ask any questions. Okay, I think that's it.
As we progress down to the final three, though, some of these things are going to come up in conversation, such as you have kids, right? And
We'll let them offer it, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let them bring it up. And most of them are going to want to. I can tell you, I think all of these are going to be very
Probably
open
will say.
about their family.
But even then, you can't say, well, how old are they and where do they go to school?
And it's tricky because conversationally, you just are curious.
Yeah,
What
it's-
church do you attend?
it's natural.
Well, not in an interview. You
Yeah,
cannot ask that in an interview.
And
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
talk some more about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, moving to the question and answer. You all have an opportunity to ask questions, but the listening part is really key, and listening to what is said and how it is said, and their responses and their answers. Really assess for their understanding of content, substance of content, versus, first of all, are they answering the question? A lot of times we're notorious for using a lot of fancy language in education. So are they really answering the question, and is it easy language to understand? How are they saying it, and do they answer with confidence? Do you hear problem solving in their responses? Do you hear we more than I? That's kind of a clue of how they may lead. Can they think on their feet? Some of the questions you're going to find are pretty in-depth questions, and so can they think on their feet and do so with confidence, and be really honest if they don't know an answer. Be honest about that versus try to make something up and then really appear not to know what they're doing. Have they done their homework? That's always really important. A lot of them that we've already talked to, they've done their homework. It was really impressive. They knew a whole lot about Georgetown. So expect them to know coming in, especially when they're ready to ask questions of you all. The other thing, we've said keep that leadership profile. You're looking for a good fit. We've been through a process to really assess what does this community want? What are you all looking for in your next superintendent? Not just for right now, in the present moment, but in the future. I think one of the things we heard was we want somebody here for the long term. We want that stability. So as you're listening to their answers, you're also looking for the right fit. Personality absolutely comes into play. Is it somebody that you feel a connection with as they're sitting there talking? And so, again, going back to the relationship component, do you feel like they've got the ability to build relationships, not just with the board, but with staff, with the community? And you'll be able to see and hear that in their responses. Feedback and note-taking. You mentioned note-taking just now. Everybody's going to be taking notes. We recommend that everybody take notes. Don't sit there with your pen down. And it's easy to do because you're going to want to listen carefully to what they're saying, but we recommend among all of you, between all of you, among all of you, you're going to get a really comprehensive all of you will have different note-taking skills. You'll come out of that with different things that resonated with you, and that's really going to be important when we get to the conversation point of when we're talking about the candidates. So, of course, we leave space on the form for you, but you might want to have some extra paper off to the side. Each candidate will have an interview form for each candidate and a way to do that. So,
It's always might be helpful to do some kind of blonde hair, dark hair, something. Don't put blue shirt, because the next time they might not have. But some way to, because we have actually had board members that were talking about the wrong candidate. Because you're absolutely right, James. You get by number 5, you're like, what did number 1 look like?
Yeah.
So
We pay attention, we'll correct you if you do that. But it happens.
Experience. Pretty easy to do.
yeah.
Hire the wrong person.
That's good, thank you for that. And as you're going through the interviews, I think you just have to be really disciplined. Don't draw conclusions right away. Don't be ready to talk about every applicant after they leave the room. Just pause and wait until all of the applicants have been interviewed. And when we have that discussion as a collective, I think that will help this process. We start with 6 candidates, and after you complete the 6 interviews, we'll go into closed session with you. We have a process, and it's a very
eye-opening.
It is an eye-opening process.
Yes.
So we will help walk you through that in a very efficient way. We will not ask you to take a vote in closed session, but the process that we go through will leave us with the impression of who those candidates are that rise to the top, the way we handle that process. We call it's a Delphi process, and we'll explain all of that in closed session. But think individually. Again, step 1 as you're thinking about going from 6 to 3. Think about who really resonated with you all. Are they capable of doing the work? Do they have the experience level to do what this district and community needs and is asking for? We'll talk about each applicant. We'll talk about strengths, concerns, issues, but it's really important that we're all listening to one another in that conversation. That's going to be really important. We're not going to rush the process. So we will be here as long as we need to get whatever on the table to reduce it from 6 to 3.
almost in every instance,
Yeah.
it's a time that you hear your colleagues and I'll watch and a board member will go, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
That's an aspect that you're right, I hadn't thought about. And so that listening part of this for each other, because you have 7 different histories and viewpoints and all of that sort of stuff. And to us, that's real magical. That's very magical. The second round is where we are now with 3 candidates, and you need to know them much better than you got to look at them the first round. It's there will be times that you will have only a couple of you in the room with the candidate. The rules still apply. The do not talk about still applies anytime you're with these candidates through this whole interview process. So just remember that, even though you think, well, we're not in a formal board meeting or we're not, they still apply until that final decision is made. This is where you pursue those items more deeply. This is where you're looking at, and you will have a time after those 3 candidates are selected, or we select them for you, that you will be able to say, we need a deep dive into these topics. And so that's where we will put together the script for you. You will want to look at their competencies and their accomplishments more closely, certainly their philosophy more closely, and their practices, their style, perhaps at that point. But Ray, you're the only people that understand the history of Georgetown, where it is today, and where it needs to go. You will be the ones. that have that comprehensive view. And so raise those topics and issues that are unique to Georgetown, and make sure that you know what is exactly critical as a priority for finding out about that. Again, we will take notes next week and we will prepare another outline for you. The second round does go longer with each candidate. I mean, you have them for a whole afternoon and then an evening, so it is much more intense. Here's your famous question, list of questions again. We just want to make sure that that's it. And then we have time with an exit interview. This is really a pretty scripted meeting. It's so that the candidate gets a chance to tell you, if I come, can my children do X, Y, and Z? If I come, can my spouse be able to work in the district? If I come, can I have certain things? And they'll tell you it's not a negotiation time. It is only a one-way communications time. Even if it's something you've never done, at that point we would suggest you just say thank you for letting us know. That's a debrief. You really want to know, have you blown it with them?
Can I ask a question? Because I responded to this. Could it be the executive team meets over breakfast, or is it just for the president and vice
There
president?
are different activities that I'd like to talk about in the closed session, and then we can decide about that, if that's possible. Okay? Determine their continued interest, respond to any unanswered questions. Again, the rules still apply, and it's not a negotiations time. It's a time really for information sharing there.
So is that to July, I'm trying to make sure I
That's
got
the
date.
July.
That's
Yes,
the July.
July dates. It's the 12th,
Saturday.
13th, 14th, and goes to the 15th. Yes.
That would be the 15th.
Thanks for checking that.
Yeah.
So I would think that if they're asking those kind of questions, we ought to be very cautious about giving them an answer.
Yeah.
It would, say, sure, we would have to check.
Yeah, we need to talk to the board.
We have to talk to the whole board about that.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying, yes,
Yes.
your wife can work for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you don't want to make any decisions the whole board hadn't talked about.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the
And
important
if
part.
something comes up, then I'd bring it back to the board. If
Yeah.
something comes up you're not sure about, that you haven't already said as a board.
There's not usually anything that's outrageous, but when you debrief at the end and you have these three, we actually have an agenda for this meeting, we have a script for this meeting, we have a document that they bring with the things that they're interested in their contract. And so it's really not much of an interaction time. It is really just, here's the things that I would want in my contract, or here's the things that would be important to me. Maybe I can't come until, we've had that. I can't come until semester. Well, that's a problem, well, it's not a problem, you got.
It's definitely a discussion.
It's definitely something that the people might want to talk about. So I'm just throwing things out. Nobody has said that. Nobody
Serve
has,
at the pleasure of the board.
nobody has said that. I'm just throwing that out.
One of the things that will hopefully keep you from having a whole lot of conversation in that meeting is that we're going to talk with them, try to find everything out they want
Ahead of time.
and that they think they need. And, one example of that you may not have even thought about is, in most cases, they're going to have to sell a house, and they're going to have to buy a house. So what do you do about that? They're going to probably ask, will you do this? So, in addition to paying my moving expenses, will you pay, for my rent until we sell our house, or something like that? And that's pretty typical. So we'll try to cover that ahead of time. see what the
We
situation is,
really
let
don't
you
want
know.
y'all to be surprised
Yeah.
at anything, so we're going to try to investigate everything ahead of time before this meeting. But you really want to know, do they want this job? Are they still interested? You've been here
Yeah.
now for these 2 visits. You've met with this board. Are you still interested in your job? So.
Let's just say hypothetically that one of us is selling a house.
And you want to donate that to the district?
We'll
I
talk.
mean, they could talk, whoever it is.
That is it, unless you have more questions and concerns, and we'll clarify a little bit more as we go through.
This is very helpful. Thank you. Okay, so now we will go into close. Do we come back into open to adjourn the meeting? I'm just joking. But we'll go into closed upstairs at 11:37 a.m.
Thank y'all so much.
Okay, so we are back in open session. We opened this meeting earlier this morning at about 11 a.m., went into closed at 11:30. We are now back in open. Let the record reflect that we have a quorum of board members present. The only remaining business is to adjourn. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
I so moved.
I second.
I think it was a tie between Trustee Blank and Trustee Benold. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, this meeting is adjourned.